an idiot and such a loser. I was so wasteful and extravagant and irresponsible. I just didn't have that sort of money on me anymore. I was always the big shot, buying the big presents for everybody, and I was just such an arrogant fool. But I thought to myself I would take extra money from the people I'm collecting debts from. There was one person I was collecting a debt from that was living in the Hilton in Nicosia. And I knew what he looked like, and I knew his name. I knew where he was living. And I was following this man, and all I could see really was the back of his head. I didn't know him personally, but as I was looking at his head, I was just hating every single part of him. And I followed him to his room, and I just was thinking about all the things I would do to him, and I forced my way into his room, and I left him in a very bad way. And I then, like a common thief, began to steal all of his money that he had in drawers or wardrobes or luggage. I stole the money that he owed to my boss and a little extra as well that I was going to give to my parents. But it wasn't enough. And so I then began to break into virtually every room on the floor. And I would force my way into the rooms, and if anybody was in one of those rooms, it was really not good for them. And I would, as I say, do this robbery and this stealing. I was so pathetic. I finally got the money that my parents needed, and I gave that to them. And, you know, it was not long after this that the police in Cyprus finally caught up with me, thank goodness. But I don't know where this would have ended. Now, when the police arrested me, well, I was fully familiar with interrogation procedures. And I was going to play it real cold and real cool. I was not going to say very much at all. And as soon as they would let me go, I would basically get a flight and leave the country. But I broke so many laws, in fact, international laws, they really had no intention of letting me go. When the police arrested me, they were being so stupid with me. There was mainly two of them which were talking to me all the time. They had me handcuffed, and one was offering me little cigarettes and little coffees, and the other one was shouting his head off at me. And I was being really obnoxious and rude to them, so I really deserved all I got. They should have just shot me anyway. That's basically this one guy. He was being so nasty and he was upsetting me, and he then gave me this almighty slap in my face. And you see, nobody really slapped me in my face in those days. And I really got so upset. I kicked him in his head, and it was almost funny because he nearly flew halfway across the room. It was only a small room, but I nearly killed him. And as soon as I hit this one Greek CID officer, they realized what they were dealing with. And they started shouting for help, and all these policemen ran into this small little room. It was really funny. I mean, there must have been hundreds of them in there, in a small little room, and they were shouting their heads off at me in Greek, and, well, you know what? They had me handcuffed, and they had guns and batons, and even if I was a 10 times world champion in Kung Fu, it really wouldn't have made any difference at all anyway, because they just would have shot me, and that would have been the end of it. Well, they beat me so well that day, I really got what I deserved. All of them. They just pounded into me, and they then began to shackle my legs to my handcuffs. And then every day and night, especially in the evening at 10 o'clock, they'll take me to the offices upstairs, and they would beat me in so many different ways. They did something to me called al bastonando, where they sit you in a wooden chair and they put your feet through the holes of another wooden chair. They sit on your legs and they handcuff you behind your back. And I mean, please do not feel sorry for me, because I should have been beaten all over anyway. But they would beat the soles of my feet, and they would beat me, and I don't want to sound arrogant here, but it didn't really hurt me at all in the very beginning. But they did it every single day and night, and they would always put my feet into cold water to stop the bruising. But I tell you, they did it so long that my back was beginning to hurt me. They were really bashing me in so badly. And in the end, you know, I admitted to crimes I'd done and crimes I hadn't done, all to do with robbery and violent crime. In the end, they gave me 3 years in Nicosia Central Prison, and well, that was interesting when they tried to take me there. The prison, to describe it to you very quickly, is right in the middle of this divided island. Many of you will know that the north part is occupied by the Turkish and the southern part by the Greeks. And the prison is right in the middle of this divided island. The prison is partly built by the Greeks, partly built by the Turkish, and part of it is actually built by the British Army. And because of overpopulation, I sort of fell into the Turkish part of the prison. This was really more like a dungeon than a prison. There was no segregation. Everybody was literally mixed together. Murderers and thieves and pedophiles and terrorists and rapists and whatever else you can possibly imagine that somebody can commit to be in prison. We were all mixed together. The only attempt of segregation was a separate block that had men that committed some pretty peculiar crimes. They had mental illness, and they were always given Valium tablets to keep them sedated. They could get drugs very easily, and you could always tell which ones were those guys there. And their gate was always open, and they could walk anywhere in the prison. And they'll walk around with blades that they'll break out the Gillette that you'll shave with, or they'll have makeshift knives that they'll make with a blade and a pen, and they'll walk past you and cut you or stab you for nothing more than a cigarette butt. In this place, every month, men would get very badly beaten up or cut up or gang raped or even killed, sometimes for no reason. On the first day they tried to put me in there was on Christmas Eve. This was the rest of Christmas of my life. And they tried to put me in this small little cell. There were 7 bunk beds, and I was the 14th man they were going to put in that cell. And as these 2 guards were unchaining my shackles, I looked around that cell, and you know, there is no force on God's earth that would have put me in there. Because everything that you can imagine that one man can actually do to another man was happening in there. And as soon as they unchained me, I decided I've had enough and I'm going home. Stuff this. And I turned around and I was walking off. I didn't know what I was thinking because I wasn't going to go anywhere. And these 2 guards, they tried to restrain me, and they were just doing their job, these 2 poor guards. But I reckon I broke every finger and hand and arm that they had. And I turned around a second time to walk off, and then one of the prisoners inside the cell, he yelled something at me. I don't remember what it was. I'm sure he swore at me or something like this. And it really wound me up so much, and I went back into the cell, and I grabbed him by his head, and I began to smash his head into the floor. I wanted to crack his head open, and I didn't like the look of any one of those guys in there, and I proceeded to attack all of them in there. And I really lost the plot. I was not just hitting the guys, but the walls and the floors and everything. And somebody raised the alarm in the prison, and then all these guards rushed into my cell. You know, I'd been there before. And they surrounded me with guns, and there was probably about 10 of them. Maybe there was a bit less, but it felt like 10 of them around me with guns. And they were stabbing the guns into me, shouting, you know, "Stamada," which means stop in Greek, you know. "We're going to shoot you, you crazy English." And I said to them, "Well, shoot me." I didn't care less. I wanted to put a bullet in my head and finish the whole thing. And one of the guards behind me, he bashed the back of his gun on the back of my head to knock me out. Although it didn't knock me out at all, but it really hurt. And then they then dragged me to the solitary confinement block, and my head was really pounding. And they put me in this empty cell. It was a whole block with 2 guys, me and this other guy. He was a Jewish guy. He was in there for his safety because the Palestinian prisoners wanted to kill them just because of their religion and nationality. Well, there I was in this empty cell. Now, really, friends, what do you think I had going for me here? I was really at the bottom of the pit of life. I mean, I didn't find my religion helped me in any way at all. As a Buddhist, yes, indeed, when my life was going smoothly, I could sit down and meditate and concentrate and get in touch with myself and find peace in my life. But I tell you now, when my life was being tested and I was in this dungeon, I just didn't, you know, my fiancé was dead. I didn't really have the slightest inclination to sit down and meditate. I just didn't feel I had the strength anymore at all. And I guess since that moment, I lost interest in religion altogether. I don't wish to offend any of you, but for me, religion became irrelevant. And I guess I'm still not interested in religion. My martial arts was meant to give me discipline and self-control, and I guess I got to a point in my life where I was completely out of control. The only thing at the time that would get me out of that prison was my ability to fight. Well, they finally moved me into the main prison, and they put me in this small single cell, which was the size of a small double bed. And I was going to be in there for the rest of the 3 years. Are you all with me, friends? You know, one of the things you learn pretty quickly when you go to prison is who your real friends and family are. I say that because you really depend on your friends and your family to write to you or visit you, or maybe you might be able to call them. You depend on these things like lifelines. You really do. They keep you sane. You see, friends, I was in my cell passing away the hours. Most prisons around the world, they let you out of your cell at least for an hour or 2 a day, sometimes more. In this place, sometimes they'll leave you locked up for 2 weeks. Well,